Here is the situation. NASCAR just denied Cleetus McFarland a shot at Talladega. The internet went absolutely sideways. Fans were furious. The debates were loud, and everyone had an opinion about whether the decision was fair. But here is what almost nobody was talking about in the middle of all that news. In the very same week that NASCAR was telling him to slow down in one lane, one of the biggest names in powersports was signing a multi-year deal to back his entire operation. And that deal is not what most people think. It goes far deeper than a logo on a race car, and understanding what it actually means changes the whole story. So let us start from the beginning, because to understand why any of this matters, you need to know who Cleetus McFarland actually is. His real name is Garrett Mitchell. He is 31 years old, born and raised in Florida, and he built one of the most loyal audiences in the motorsports content world entirely. Over 4.6 million YouTube subscribers follow him for one reason. He makes real, raw, high-energy content about cars, horsepower, and the kind of motorsports culture that mainstream media has always ignored. Burnout contests, drag racing, Crown Vic chaos, shop builds, track days. That is the world he created, and people showed up for it in mass. But Cleetus is not just a content creator. 6 years ago, he bought a racetrack. DeSoto Speedway in Bradenton, Florida became the Freedom Factory, and that facility is now the beating heart of everything he does. He runs his own events there, the Freedom 500, the 2.4 hours of Le Mullet's Crown Vic race wins, and that venue has turned into something genuinely unique in American motorsport. It is part racetrack, part content studio, part fan experience, and entirely his own. Now, none of that would have naturally pointed toward NASCAR career. That part of the story traces back to one person, the late Greg Biffle, a former NASCAR champion, and Cleetus met almost by accident. They both loved helicopters. They both loved Crown Vics. They just started spending time together. Somewhere along the way, Biffle started teaching Mitchell how to actually drive a stock. As Cleetus told People magazine, Greg Biffle was an accidental mentor of mine. Like in no way, shape, or form when him and I met did we foresee our relationship to be the way. It was where he taught me how to be a stock car driver, you know? Biffle died in a plane crash in December, along with his wife, son, and daughter. It was a devastating loss, and Cleetus has been open about how much weight that all these things I do, I think about him a lot. How much more fun it would be with him, he said. We're just trying to spread the be like Biff mentality. That context matters, because everything Cleetus is building right now is happening in the shadow of that loss, and it is fueling him forward rather than slowing him. Now let us talk about the actual NASCAR journey, because the resume is important to understand before getting into the controversy. Cleetus has made 9 total starts across NASCAR sanctioned racing. He has 5 ERCA starts and 2 ERCAE starts. His ARCA debut at Daytona ended in a crash after 17 laps. His ARCA start at Talladega went much better. He finished 10th. His Truck Series debut at Daytona lasted just 5 laps before a crash ended his day. And then came Rockingham. Before Rockingham even happened, Richard Childress Racing had already entered the picture, and that partnership is worth understanding properly. Ty Dillon, grandson of Richard Childress and a Cup Series driver for Colleague Racing, was the one who brought the idea to the organization. The logic was straightforward, a quid pro quo that benefited both sides. Cleetus brings one of the most engaged social media audiences in motorsports. RCR brings decades of racing infrastructure, engineering knowledge, and the tools to actually develop a driver. Danny Lawrence, vice president at RCR, explained what happened when Cleetus first toured their facility. We had a moment where we were touring the engine shop, and most people don't know this kind of thing, but he was like, yeah, that's AR07, and that's a SB2. Then he's like, how much camber do you run, and how much caster do you? That moment changed the room. Lawrence continued, he's not just a YouTube personality, he's actually a racer. Mark Rett of Rett Jones Racing, who was connected to Cleetus through Biffle, had a similar experience. The first time we looked at data together was some throttle traces from Ilmer a year ago. He immediately said, yep, I know what I'm looking at because it was Holly-based and the software was identical to the software he is using for his drag race. So when Cleetus showed up at Rockingham Speedway for his O'Reilly Auto Parts Series debut, driving a Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet, the expectation from the people who actually know him was not zero. They believed in what he could do. The race itself was not a triumph by any conventional measure. He had 4 spins, finished 32nd out of 38 cars, and ended up 6 laps behind race winner William Sawalich. But he completed 244 of 250 laps. He did not wreck any other competitors, and earlier that same afternoon, he had finished 4th in the ARCA East event on the same track. When he climbed out of the car and talked to reporters, he had a big smile on his face and said, All this internet talk got me thinking, maybe I shouldn't come back. Psyche. See you guys in 2 weeks. Talladega. He thought Talladega was next. It was not. NASCAR reviewed the Rockingham performance and made its decision. Cleetus McFarland was denied approval to compete in the April 25th O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race, Talladega Super. The announcement triggered an immediate and intense reaction across social media. But NASCAR was clear about the John Probst, NASCAR's executive vice president and chief racing development officer, addressed it directly. It's not NASCAR saying no. We're just saying we want to see more experience first. When you look back at what we've asked other drivers to do, we're asking him to do something very similar and to show he's progressing. He's on the steep side of the learning curve. We will progress him as fast as we can, but in a very meaningful way that doesn't get him in a bad situation. Probst also addressed the funding question head on. If it was just about clicks and dollars, we had an easy decision with Cleetus, but it's not about that. It's just making sure that we're doing right for him as a driver and as a human being, to make sure that when we say you're ready, that we feel in all our hearts that he's ready. Cleetus himself described the denial as a little bit of a kick in the nuts, but handled the situation like a professional. Probst acknowledged as much, calling his response that of a true professional. Now here is where the fan frustration becomes understandable. Cleetus finished the race. He avoided contact with other competitors. He scored a 4th-place finish in the ARCA East event earlier that same, and NASCAR itself has been on record saying he is good for the sport. The argument from fans is not that he should be given a free pass. It is that the bar seems inconsistently applied when you watch established drivers make costly mistakes at super speedways every single week without any approval process scrutiny. The viewership data also makes this harder to ignore. According to reporting that cited Sports Business Journal's Adam Stern, the Rockingham O'Reilly race on the CW drew a 0.65 rating and 1.165 million viewers. That represented a 12% jump in rating and an 11% increase in audience compared to the same race the previous. Through the first 7 races of the 2026 season, the series was averaging 1.282 million viewers per race, up 3.6% year-over-year. Cleetus did not race in all those events, but the numbers show a clear pattern. When he is on the track, more people are watching. Justin Allgaier, the 2024 O'Reilly Series champion who leads the 2026 standings, offered one of the more measured takes from inside the paddock. I don't envy that position at all. I know that today had to be really tough on him, and especially with kind of some of the social media stuff that he's had going against him in the last. So I was proud of him putting the effort in and trying to make sure that he was where he needed to be out to go and have a solid day. NASCAR has not slammed the door. Probst confirmed that NASCAR's competition department would continue working with McFarland and that the process is race by race. The path forward exists. It is just going to take more steps. And while NASCAR was making him wait, Polaris made their move. On April 7, 2026, Polaris officially announced a multi-year partnership with Cleetus McFarland and his motorsports community. The press release was clear about the scope. This partnership would cover his operations, content, experiences at the Freedom Factory, and create new ways for fans to engage with the Polaris brand through Cleetus. Reed Wilson, president of Polaris Off-Road Vehicles, stated, "We are big fans of Cleetus and the community he is. We couldn't just watch from the outside. We had to be a part of it. He brings a level of energy, passion, and authenticity that reflects what American motorsports is all about. And we look forward to supporting a community that shares our love for performance and adventure." Cleetus responded in his own style. "I built my community around freedom, horsepower, and having a good time, and Polaris fits that perfectly. They get the people, they get the spirit. Hell yeah, brother, that's what we're all about." Teaming up allows us to introduce more people to power sports and the fun that comes with it. There's also a personal thread running through this. Greg Biffle was already a Polaris partner before his death. It was Biffle who introduced Cleetus to the Polaris executives by bringing them to his events. In many ways, this partnership is another piece of Biffle's legacy, continuing through the people he connected. Now here is the catch. And this is the part that actually changes. This deal is not a sponsorship, not in the traditional sense. Polaris is not buying ad time or getting a logo placement on a fire suit. They are being woven into the entire operational fabric of the Cleetus McFarland. The official language from Polaris covers operations, content, freedom factory activation, fan experiences, and off-road. That means every corner of what Cleetus does day to day now has a Polaris presence. The practical side of this showed up immediately. Cleetus surprised his Freedom Factory crew with an all-new Polaris off-road as part of the partnership launch. equipment that his team will now use to actually run the facility and produce content. He also received a fully custom Polaris RZR Pro, R, as his personal rig. He also made the switch from Can-Am, ending that association entirely and bringing his whole garage into the Polaris. As Cleetus put it about the state of the Freedom Factory's equipment going into this, we've got some pretty raggedy equipment up till this, and that's what part of our Polaris partnership is fixing up. This is the real catch. Polaris now has fingerprints across full operation. The vehicles on the property, the content being filmed, the fan experiences at events, the marketing direction, the off-road build, all of it can now be shaped by this partnership. Cleetus built his brand on independent, unfiltered chaos that was entirely his. That identity is not gone, but it has evolved. A major corporate partner is now baked into the engine tire business. The fit is natural. Polaris and the Freedom Factory share genuine DNA, but the scale of integration is significant, cannot be understated. From Polaris's perspective, the business logic is obvious. They are not buying random eyeballs. They are plugging directly into a fan base that does not just watch Cleetus, they follow him. They show up for the Freedom 500. They watch Crown Vic Chaos. They tune into his ARCA and NASCAR lives, which have approached 1 million viewers each time. Polaris is not investing in a content creator. They are investing in an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is still expanding. Cleetus has purchased a straight rail pro late model from Port City Race Cars through Rhett Jones Racing. With a specific vision attached, he plans to launch his own pro late model series that runs alongside his Crown Vic events. With approximately 6 events per year on that calendar, the idea is to add a late model division to the same card, invite local racers and friends to join in, and gradually build it into a structured series. His internal team already runs the Crown Vic races, so the infrastructure for adding another class already is. He also expressed interest in partnering with URA promoter Ricky Brooks, who already works with the Freedom Factory on existing events. Cleetus told Short Track Scene, "Yeah, my plan with that deal is to just start my own late model series that will travel with the Crown Vics. We do about 6 events a year with the Crown Vics, so I want to start my own little pro late model series on top of that, tag them with what we're already doing. This is not a side project. When you map it all out, YouTube content, Freedom Factory operations, grassroots Crown Vic events, the new pro late model series, ARCA starts, O'Reilly series development, the RCR partnership, and now Polaris backing the whole structure. What you're looking at is a serious, layered motorsports business being built. Cleetus has also been candid about his long-term NASCAR goals in a way that demonstrates genuine self-awareness. The goal is to run the Daytona 500. Like, that was the original reason I started all of this, but in the original mission, I didn't really understand what it took to. And on what comes after, I think my future in NASCAR, it looks a lot longer now, and I'm trying to develop myself into a driver that's capable of competing at the higher level. I'm not saying I'm just going to make it to the 500 and then just be done. I want to see where this opportunity at RCR goes and stay part of that for a long time. That is not the language of someone treating NASCAR as a content stunt. That is someone who understands the gap between where he is and where he wants to be and is building a real plan to close it. NASCAR denied him Talladega. The story got bigger. Polaris signed him to a deal that covers his entire operation. The story got bigger. He bought a late model and started building his own series. The story got bigger. Usually when a driver gets denied for a race, things quiet down. With Cleetus McFarland, the opposite keeps happening, and that fact alone tells you something important about where this all